The galaxy was full of colors and glowing stars, blue planets, silver moons, but for Lyra, everything felt empty. She was a small alien girl, barely 4 feet tall, with soft silver skin and bright violet eyes that shimmered like glass. Every world she visited had pushed her away. Every alien male she met had rejected her, some with cold laughter, others with silent disgust. They said she was too small, too weak, too strange. They said her kind didn't belong anywhere. For a long time, Lyra believed them. Her tiny ship drifted alone between dying stars. Inside, she sat beside the window, watching the endless space outside. She whispered softly to herself, "Maybe there is no home for me." Her ship system beeped. Low power. The last bit of fuel was almost gone. She had no one to call, no place to land. She pressed her hand on the glass. A single tear rolled down her cheek and floated in the air. Weightless, just like her dreams. She whispered again, "I wish someone would just see me." Then something blinked on her radar. A signal. A human signal. It came from an old outpost on a dead moon far away from trade routes. The humans had left that region years ago. It shouldn't have been active. Lyra hesitated. Her ship trembled. Systems flickered. She had no other choice. She set a course toward the moon. "Please," she whispered. "Let someone be there." Outside, a storm of cosmic dust and lightning surrounded the moon. Her small ship shook violently as she entered the atmosphere. The controls sparked. Flames danced on the hull. Lyra gripped the handles tightly. "Hold together. Just a little more." The ship crashed through thick clouds, spinning, burning. The ground rushed closer, faster, faster. Lyra screamed as the cockpit glass cracked. Then, boom, silence, smoke filled the air. Pieces of metal lay scattered across the gray landscape. Lyra crawled out from the wreckage, coughing, weak, bleeding from a cut near her eye. The storm had stopped. The world around her was quiet and empty. She looked up at the dark sky. No stars, only cold wind. Her heart sank. "This is it," she whispered. "This is where I end." She fell to her knees beside the broken ship. Her vision blurred. The chill bit her skin. Her breathing slowed. Everything faded, but then, footsteps. Soft, careful, steady footsteps. Through the smoke, a tall figure appeared, wearing a dark suit with a glowing visor. A human. He moved closer, scanning the wreckage. When he saw her small body trembling beside the fire, he froze. Lyra weakly lifted her head. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. "A human?" she whispered. The figure knelt beside her. His voice was calm, low, and full of warmth. "Don't move," he said. "You're safe now." Lyra blinked. No one had ever said that to her before. The man carefully lifted her up. She was so light he could feel her heartbeat through her thin skin. Her violet eyes met his through the visor, full of fear and something else. Hope. He carried her toward the nearby outpost. It was small. Just metal walls, a few broken lights, and an old heating core still working after all these years. He laid her down on a soft blanket and turned the heater toward her. When she opened her eyes again, she saw him sitting beside her, a tired man with brown hair, a scar on his jaw, and eyes that looked like he'd seen too much pain. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Why did you help me?" He smiled faintly. "Because you needed it." She stared at him in silence. Every other male in the galaxy had turned away. Yet this human, this stranger, had risked his life to pull her out of the fire. Outside, the storm began to rise again. The night wind howled through the cracks of the old station. Lyra sat up slowly, holding a cup of warm water he gave her. Her small fingers shook. "I don't even know your name," she said softly. He looked at her and said, "Eli." She nodded. "Thank you, Eli," he replied. "Get some rest. You're safe here." She looked around the small room. It was cold, lonely, yet somehow it felt warmer than any palace she had ever visited. For the first time in her life, she felt something she couldn't name. Something fragile, something human. Outside, the wreck of her ship still smoked under the alien sky. But high above them, deep in the darkness of space, red lights began to blink. Unmarked drones. Searching. They had found her signal. The cold night wrapped around the old human outpost like a ghost. Wind howled through broken vents and the stars above blinked faintly through dusty glass. Inside, a weak blue light flickered. Lyra sat on a small metal bed wrapped in a rough blanket. Her silver skin glowed softly under the dim light, and her violet eyes followed the human who had saved her. His name was Eli. He moved quietly, checking the generator, sealing cracks in the wall, making sure the heat didn't die. Every sound echoed. The hum of old machines, the soft whistle of air leaks, the heartbeat of two lost souls trapped on a dead moon. Lyra spoke first, her voice soft and uncertain. "You could have left me there." Eli didn't look up. "Yeah, I could have." He adjusted a valve. "But I didn't." "Why?" she asked again, still not understanding. He finally turned toward her. His eyes were tired yet kind. "Because someone once did the same for me." Lyra lowered her gaze. Her fingers trembled as she held the cup of warm water he had given her. "No one ever stayed for me," she whispered. "Not once." Eli sat on a nearby crate, resting his elbows on his knees. "Then maybe it's time someone did." For a long time they sat in silence. The wind outside screamed like a living thing and the metal walls shivered. Eli handed her a small energy bar. She took a small bite and smiled weakly. "Tastes terrible," she said. He laughed, a real warm laugh that echoed in the empty room. "Yeah, it does. But it keeps you alive." For the first time in many years, Lyra laughed too. It was small and fragile, but real. That sound filled the outpost with something new, something neither of them had felt in a long time: comfort. Later, when the light dimmed and silence returned, Eli activated a small radar screen. A red dot blinked on it. Then another, his face hardened. "Damn!" Lyra walked closer, her eyes narrowing. "What is that?" "Scanners," Eli replied. "They're searching this moon." "Not mine." Lyra's heart skipped. "They're looking for me." Eli turned to her sharply. "Who's they?" "The Empire," she said quietly. They rejected me, but now they want me back. I don't know why." Eli clenched his fists. "If they find you, what will they do?" She looked away. "They'll erase me completely." Eli didn't speak for a moment. He stared at the blinking red dots and coming closer every minute. He knew what it meant. If he hid her, he'd be marked as a traitor to the entire galactic authority. He looked at Lyra again. Her small frame, her tired eyes, her quiet hope. She had already suffered too much. Finally, he stood up. "Then we don't let them find you." She blinked, confused. "What?" He grabbed his gear and checked his rifle. "You're not dying here. Not after I just pulled you out of hell." Lyra shook her head. "No. You'll die if they see you helping me." Eli gave her a small crooked smile. "I've already died once inside. This time I choose what's worth dying for." He opened a hidden hatch in the floor. "There's an old mining tunnel below. It leads out to the canyon. You can stay hidden there till I draw them off." Lyra hesitated. "You would risk your life and for me?" Eli looked at her for a long moment. "You asked why I helped you. Maybe it's because I remember what it felt like to be invisible." She swallowed hard. "You're human. You don't owe me anything," he smiled again, faintly. "Maybe not. But maybe that's what makes it right." Suddenly, a loud boom shook the ground. The scanner flashed red. The enemy had landed. Eli quickly helped Lyra down the hatch. The tunnel was dark and cold. He pressed a flashlight into her hand. "If I don't come back," he began. Lyra grabbed his wrist tightly. "Don't say that." He paused, surprised by her strength. She looked into his eyes, glowing violet meeting tired brown, and said, "Promise me you'll come back." Eli nodded slowly. "I promise." He closed the hatch and turned toward the door, rifle ready. Outside, metallic footsteps approached. Lyra crouched in the darkness below, shaking. She heard the sound of lasers and shouting above. Eli's voice roared once, "Get away from her!" Then silence. She covered her mouth to stop herself from crying. Every second felt like a lifetime. Finally, the hatch creaked open. A hand reached down. It was him. Burn marks covered his jacket, smoke on his face, but he was smiling. "Told you I'd come back," he said. Lyra's tears fell silently. She reached up, her small fingers clutching his hand. At that moment, she realized something powerful. The galaxy had countless stars, but none had ever shone for her. Until now, they fled into the tunnels together, the light of the outpost fading behind them. The Empire's searchlight swept across the sky, but the pair disappeared into the darkness, the human and the rejected alien girl. bound by a promise stronger than fear. And somewhere, deep inside her heart, Lyra whispered to herself, "Maybe, this time I am not alone." The tunnels were endless, dark, cold, and carved long ago by machines no one remembered. Eli's flashlight cut through the shadows, showing walls covered in strange symbols, human and alien mixed together, forgotten by time. Lyra followed close behind. Her small steps echoed softly, her silver skin glowing faintly like moonlight in the dark. She was exhausted, but she didn't complain. Not once. Eli stopped at a junction and scanned the map on his wrist. "These tunnels go on for miles," he said. "If we move fast, we can reach the canyon before sunrise." Lyra nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Will they follow?" He looked at her. "They're already following." Far above, the sky roared. Black ships swept through the clouds like shadows with red eyes. Drones dropped to the ground, scanning for energy traces. The alien empire had unleashed its hunters. They wanted Lyra, and they would burn the whole moon to find her. Eli and Lyra reached a narrow bridge inside the tunnels. Beneath it, a deep pit glowed faintly blue. It wasn't water, it was energy. Old mining reactors still pulsed below, half alive, half dead. Lyra stared down, mesmerized. "It's beautiful." Eli grabbed her hand. "And deadly. Stay close." As they crossed, a metallic voice echoed through the tunnels, cold and sharp. "Subject 47 detected. Human presence confirmed. Capture or terminate." Lyra froze. Her heart pounded. "They found us." Eli raised his weapon, eyes scanning the darkness. "Then we make them regret it." The first drone appeared, sleek, black, spinning silently. Eli fired, the blast lighting up the cave. The drone fell in pieces, but more came, sliding down the walls like mechanical insects. "Keep moving," Eli shouted. Lyra ran, her small figure darting across the bridge as sparks and lasers filled the air. Eli covered her, firing shot after shot. One beam grazed his arm, burning the sleeve, but he didn't stop. When they reached the other side, he sealed the door behind them with a burst of plasma. The explosion shook the ground, echoing like thunder. They collapsed inside a narrow chamber, both gasping for air. Lyra looked at him. His arm was bleeding. "You're hurt," she said. He smiled faintly. "Just a scratch." But she knew it wasn't. She tore a piece of her cloak and wrapped it around his arm. Her hands trembled as she worked, but her voice stayed calm. "You should have left me," she whispered. Eli chuckled softly. "You keep saying that. But you're still here, and so am I." Her violet eyes softened. "Why do you care so much?" He paused, looking at the flickering tunnel lights. "Because once I needed someone to care about me, and no one did." Lyra stared at him in silence. Something inside her chest hurt, but not in a bad way. It was the kind of pain that comes before hope. They continued deeper until they reached a wide underground cavern. Strange crystals glowed on the walls, giving off a blue light. In the center stood an ancient machine, half buried, half alive. Lyra walked closer, drawn by something she didn't understand. Her hand hovered above the machine and the crystals began to glow brighter. Eli frowned. "What's happening?" "I don't know," she whispered. It feels like it's calling me." Before he could stop her, the machine activated. Light swirled around her, scanning her body. A strange symbol appeared on the screen, the same one that had been on the Empire's wanted posters. "Subject 47, genetic key identified." Eli's heart sank. "Genetic key? Lyra, what are you?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know. I never knew. Maybe that's why they want me." The machine shut down, leaving only silence. Eli looked at her. This small, fragile being who had become the galaxy's most hunted soul. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever they want, they won't get it. Not while I'm breathing." Lyra's lips trembled. "You'll die if you stay with me." He smiled, shaking his head. "Then I'll die doing something that matters." Before she could respond, the ground shook again. Dust rained from above. The sound of engines roared through the tunnels. Eli cursed under his breath. "They found us again." He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the far exit. Behind them, metal claws tore through the walls. As they ran, Lyra looked back, and for a brief moment she saw one of the alien commanders through the smoke. A tall figure with burning yellow eyes watching her with hatred. He spoke into a communicator. "Do not harm the human. Bring me the girl alive." Lyra's heart pounded. Why alive? What did they want from her? They ran out of the tunnel and emerged into a canyon under a pale moon. The wind howled through the rocks. The stars above shimmered, cold, endless, beautiful. Eli looked back at her and said, "We'll find answers." "I promise." Lyra nodded slowly. "And if we don't?" He smiled faintly. "Then we make our own." They disappeared into the night, two silhouettes moving together against the vast alien sky. Hunted, but unbroken, and somewhere deep in Lyra's heart, she began to understand something she had never believed before. Maybe love didn't start with belonging. Maybe it started with survival. The canyon stretched wide beneath the pale light of twin moons. Dust swirled through the air, whispering secrets of worlds long gone. Eli and Lyra moved quietly, their steps soft on the stone ground. Every shadow felt alive, every sound a warning. They had escaped the tunnels, but not the hunt. Far above, black ships glided like silent predators. Their red searchlights swept across the rocks, scanning for heat, sound, life. Eli crouched behind a boulder and checked the scanner on his wrist. It flickered weakly. "They're close," he muttered. "Too close." Lyra looked up at the sky. "They'll never stop." Eli met her gaze. "Then we keep running until they do." Hours passed. The two travelers reached the ruins of an old colony. Half-buried domes and twisted antennas stuck out of the sand like broken bones. Eli led her into a cracked dome shelter. "We rest here," he said. Lyra nodded, her small frame trembling with exhaustion. She sat down on the dusty floor and looked at her hands. Silver skin with faint glowing lines that pulsed softly like veins of light. She whispered, "They're following me because of this." Eli knelt beside her. "Because of your skin?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "Because of what's inside it," he frowned. "What do you mean?" Lyra hesitated. She didn't want to tell him, not yet. Not when she didn't fully understand it herself. But then she remembered the look in his eyes. The promise he made when he said he'd protect her. She took a deep breath. "When I was born, the doctor said my DNA was strange. It didn't match any known species completely. Half my genes were from the Lyrian race, my mother's people. The other half? No one ever figured out." Eli raised an eyebrow. "The other half?" She nodded. "It was locked, hidden. Even the Empire couldn't decode it. But they said it was forbidden, like something ancient that should have stayed buried." Eli leaned closer. "And that machine in the tunnel, and it recognized you." Lyra's voice trembled. "It said I was a genetic key. I think my DNA can unlock something. Something powerful." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The ships were closing in. Eli looked at her. This small being who had no idea how important she really was. "Then we need to find out what it unlocks," he said firmly. Lyra looked at him, confused. "Why help me? You could walk away right now." He smiled faintly. "Because I've seen what the Empire does to people it fears. And I'm done watching." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt heavy but warm. Lyra finally said, "You're strange, Eli," he chuckled. "Takes one to know one." Later that night, as Lyra slept curled near the heater, Eli quietly studied the fragments he had taken from the old machine. The data glowed on his wrist display, unreadable, encrypted, but alive. He frowned. "What are you hiding, Lyra?" he whispered. Suddenly, a soft voice answered, "Maybe I should be asking you that." He turned. Lyra was awake, smiling faintly. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Your heart is too loud. It's scared." Eli blinked. "You can hear that?" She smiled a little wider. "Not with ears. My kind can sense emotion. Yours is strong." He looked away, embarrassed. "Guess it's been a long time since I trusted anyone." Lyra's eyes softened. "Then trust me. Just a little." Before he could answer, the scanner on his wrist flashed red. Eli cursed. "They've found us." Lyra stood, her body glowing faintly in panic. "Already?" He grabbed his weapon. "They must have traced the signal from that machine." Outside, searchlights cut through the darkness. Engines roared. The ground shook as soldiers landed, tall, armored figures with glowing masks and rifles that hissed with plasma. Eli pushed Lyra behind a metal beam. "Stay down." The first explosion tore through the dome. Fire and dust filled the air. Eli fired back, striking one soldier, then another. But there were too many. Lyra screamed, "Stop!" "You'll die!" Eli shouted over the chaos. "Not before you're safe." As the soldiers closed in, something inside Lyra snapped. Her hands glowed bright blue. Her eyes burned violet. The air around her shimmered. The ground cracked. Energy rippled through the ruins, pure light spreading like waves. The soldiers stumbled back, shouting in confusion. Their armor glowed red and shattered. Weapons overloaded and exploded. Eli shielded his eyes from the light. "Lyra, stop! You'll kill yourself!" But she didn't hear him, or couldn't. The light spread, wrapping around her like wings. Then just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Lyra collapsed, weak and pale, but alive. The entire battlefield was silent. The soldiers were gone, or burned out, or vanished into dust. Eli ran to her and caught her before she hit the ground. "Lyra, hey, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open. I didn't mean to." He shook his head. "Don't talk. You saved us," she whispered weakly. "Now you know why they're afraid of me." Eli looked down at her glowing hands. "You didn't destroy them. You set them free," Lyra frowned. "What do you mean?" "They weren't screaming in pain," he said softly. "They were quiet, peaceful. Whatever that power is, it doesn't just kill. It changes things." For a moment, silence returned to the ruins. Eli looked at the tiny alien girl in his arms, fragile, glowing, and powerful enough to shake the stars. He whispered to himself, "You're not a weapon. You're a miracle." Lyra's lips curved into a small, tired smile. "Miracle?" "Yeah," he said gently, "and I'll make sure no one turns you into anything else." She nodded slowly, closing her eyes. "Then promise me one thing, Eli." He leaned closer. "What?" "If I forget who I am, remind me that I was once someone worth saving." Eli's jaw tightened. "You won't forget. I promise." Outside, the storm cleared. The first light of dawn touched the canyon, and high above, the Empire's ships turned and vanished, and for now, but both of them knew, this was only the beginning. The morning sky over the canyon was orange and quiet. Too quiet. Ash still floated in the air where the ruins had burned the night before. Eli stood outside the shattered dome, scanning the horizon. His arm was bandaged, his clothes torn, but his focus sharp. Beside him, Lyra sat on a broken pillar, legs folded, staring at the sun rising over the dust. Her violet eyes looked tired, like she'd seen too much in too little time. The silence between them was gentle, until Eli's scanner beeped. He frowned. "They're regrouping." Lyra turned to him. "The Empire?" He nodded grimly. "They're coming back, and this time they won't send just soldiers." Far above, in the thin atmosphere of the dead moon, a fleet appeared, dark shapes cutting across the light of the suns. Dozens of ships, each one bearing the mark of the Empire. In the lead ship, a voice spoke through static. "Target confirmed. The rejected one lives. Prepare orbital strike." Back on the ground, Lyra's small hands trembled. "We can't fight that, Eli." Eli adjusted his rifle and looked at her. "We don't fight it. We outsmart it," she frowned. "How?" He pointed toward the mountains. "There's an old human defense base under that ridge. If the systems still work, we might have shields, maybe even guns." Lyra hesitated. "You mean ancient tech?" "Yeah," he said. "Old, unreliable, and dangerous. Just like me." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then it might just work." They ran through the canyon, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. The wind carried the sound of engines behind them. By the time they reached the base, the sun was bleeding into the horizon. The metal doors were rusted shut, covered in dust. Eli placed his hand on the old control pad. To his surprise, it blinked green. The door creaked open, revealing a massive hangar filled with forgotten machines, cobwebs, and dust-covered control panels. Lyra stepped inside, her glow lighting the way. "It feels like time stopped here," she whispered. Eli nodded. "Let's wake it up." Hours passed as Eli worked to restore the systems. Sparks flew. Engines groaned back to life. One by one, screens flickered on, showing old Earth logos and warnings in faded text. Lyra sat beside the main console, her small fingers tracing the human letters. "You humans built this to fight?" Eli replied quietly. "To survive." She looked at him. "And did you?" He paused. "Barely." Suddenly, the warning lights flared red. "Incoming fleet detected. Orbital strike in 60 seconds. Eli's eyes widened. "They're locking on." He slammed his hand on the console. Come on, come on. The shield generator groaned, then hummed to life. A faint blue dome shimmered around the base. Lyra ran to him. Is it enough? He looked up at the screens. It'll hold. For a minute. She took a deep breath. Then we make that minute count. Outside, fire rained from the sky. Blazing plasma bolts struck the shield, lighting the mountains like a second sunrise. The ground shook violently. Inside, Lyra fell to her knees, clutching her head. I can feel them. The ships. The mines behind them. Eli turned. Lyra, her voice trembled. They're afraid. They don't just want to kill me. They want what's inside me, the key. Eli grabbed her shoulders. Then don't let them have it. Whatever that power is, make it yours, not theirs. She looked into his eyes, tired, fierce human, and nodded slowly. Her hands began to glow. The same soft blue light as before, but steadier, calmer. She reached out toward the console, and the circuits lit up under her touch. The base itself responded like it recognized her. Engines roared to life. The ancient defense systems, a human design fused with alien energy, began to awaken. Eli stepped back, eyes wide. Lyra, what are you doing? Her voice was calm, almost serene. Finishing what your people started. Above, the Empire's ships fired again. But this time, the base answered. Beams of blue energy shot into the sky, slicing through the darkness like lightning. One ship exploded, then another. The shield glowed brighter. The power running through Lyra was unimaginable. Part alien, part human, perfectly balanced. Eli shouted over the noise. Lyra, stop. You'll burn yourself out. She smiled faintly through the light. You once said I wasn't a weapon, remember? He nodded, struggling to stay on his feet. Yeah. Then let me prove it, she said softly. I'm something else. The sky exploded with light. Every color of the spectrum danced over the canyon. Blue, violet, white. The Empire's ships vanished in the blaze. For a moment, everything was silent. Then slowly, the light faded. Eli opened his eyes. The base was half destroyed, the walls glowing red with heat. Smoke curled through the air, and there in the center lay Lyra, motionless, glowing faintly like a dying star. Eli rushed to her side. Lyra, hey, come on. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but peaceful. Did we win? He nodded, choking on emotion. Yeah, you did, she smiled faintly. Then maybe. Being rejected wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. He took her hand gently. Why's that? Her voice barely a whisper. Because it led me to you. Outside, the last fires burned out. The Empire's fleet was gone. For the first time in her life, Lyra was not running, not hiding. And as Eli sat beside her under the broken ceiling of the ancient base, he looked at the stars through the smoke and whispered, Let them come again. This time they'll face both of us. The stars above the dead moon were burning red that night. The air smelled of metal and smoke. And in the ruins of the old base, Eli stood like a shadow against the dawn, wounded, tired, but still alive. Beside him, Lyra lay resting on a stretcher made from broken metal. Her soft glow had faded. She looked fragile, almost human. Eli adjusted the blanket over her shoulders. You saved us, he whispered. Her voice came weakly. It's not over. I can still feel them coming. Eli clenched his fists. Let them come. High above, in the dark void. The Empire's flagship approached, the Sovereign Flame, larger than any city, its engines brighter than suns. Inside, a tall alien commander stood before a hologram of Lyra's face. His eyes glowed yellow like fire. Activate the descent protocol, he ordered coldly. This moon will burn. Thousands of ships moved into position, their weapons charged. The final hunt had begun. Eli paced the control room. Most systems were damaged, but one massive machine still hummed beneath the base. Project Helios, a forgotten fusion cannon built by humans long ago. He stared at the schematics. If this thing fires, it'll take everything around it with it. Lyra stirred. Everything, including you. He turned to her, forcing a smile. Guess that's what makes it fair. She sat up weakly. You can't do this alone. I wasn't planning to, he said softly. Their eyes met. His brown, steady and fierce. Hers glowing violet, gentle but powerful. Eli guided her toward the main reactor. The air was filled with heat and light. Sparks rained from the ceiling. She stumbled and he caught her. Easy, you've done enough. Lyra shook her head. Not yet. The power inside me, it connects to your machines. Together we can make it work. Eli hesitated. You mean merge? She nodded. You once said I wasn't a weapon. Then let's prove that by saving what's left. He stared at her for a moment, then slowly reached out his hand. Then let's finish this together. The moment their hands touched, the entire base came alive. Lights flickered, metal walls vibrated, and the reactor roared like a heartbeat. Energy flowed from her veins into the cables, fusing alien power with human technology. Lyra's glow brightened until she looked like living starlight. Her voice echoed through the control room, calm and strong. Target locked, the flagship within range. Eli's fingers danced across the console. Charging Helios cannon, 80%, 90%, come on. Outside, the Empire's ships descended in waves of fire. Plasma bolts struck the shield, tearing it apart piece by piece. Eli shouted, Lyra, now! Her eyes flashed white. The light spread from her body into the heart of the cannon. A massive beam of energy shot upward, a river of blue and violet flame cutting through the sky. It struck the flagship dead center. The explosion was like a second sunrise, blinding, endless, full of color. The shockwave tore across the moon, silencing every engine, every weapon. But inside the base, alarms screamed. The power surge was too strong. The reactor was overloading. Eli grabbed Lyra's shoulders. We did it! Shut it down! She shook her head, eyes glowing brighter. It's too late. The core is collapsing. He pulled her closer. Then we run! She looked at him, calm now. You'll never make it out in time. Eli froze. What are you saying? She smiled softly. The system's fused with me. I can contain it, but only if I stay. No, he shouted. There has to be another way. Lyra placed her small hand against his chest. You gave me something no one else ever did, a reason to live. Let me give something back. He shook his head, tears burning his eyes. I'm not leaving you. Her voice softened like a whisper in the wind. You already saved me, Eli, now let me save you. The floor shook violently. The walls began to crack. She stepped back, her glow rising again. Brighter than before, wings of light unfurling from her back. Eli reached for her one last time. Lyra! She smiled through the light. Promise me you'll remember that I wasn't just rejected, I was found. Then the light exploded. From orbit, the moon bloomed with blinding color, blue, purple, gold, and then went dark. Every ship in the Empire's fleet vanished in the silent wave that followed. Hours later, among the debris and ashes, a single escape pod drifted into the black. Inside, Eli sat quietly, eyes closed, holding a tiny crystal glowing faintly violet, all that remained of her. He whispered, You kept your promise, Lyra, now it's my turn. He looked out at the endless stars. For the first time in his life, they didn't look empty, because somewhere in that light he felt her, watching, waiting, alive in a way that no empire could ever destroy. Space was quiet again. No sirens, no gunfire, no warships tearing through the stars. Only silence, deep, wide, and endless. A small human escape pod floated through that silence, its lights blinking weakly. Inside sat Eli, his body tired, his eyes empty but alive. He stared out the cracked window, watching fragments of the destroyed fleet drift by like glowing dust. In his hand, he held a small violet crystal, still pulsing softly, as if breathing. Still here, he whispered. Just like you promised. Days passed. Eli's pod was finally picked up by a passing merchant ship, one brave enough to enter a war zone. When they opened the hatch, the rescuers found him sitting quietly, holding that same glowing shard. What happened here? One of them asked. Eli's answer was simple. A miracle. They didn't understand, but they didn't question him further. The war between the Empire and the remaining colonies was over. The explosion from the moon had released an energy wave that disabled every weapon in the system, melted circuits, erased battle codes, silenced every engine built for killing. No one knew how it happened. Eli did. He just never said it out loud. Months later, the galaxy began to heal. New treaties were signed. Old enemies started talking again. The story of the rejected alien and the human who saved her spread across every world, first as rumor, then as legend. They called it the Light of Lyra. Some said it was a weapon. Others said it was a spirit. But those who had seen the explosion up close swore they heard a voice inside the light whisper, You are not alone. Eli lived quietly on a small outpost near a growing human alien colony. He repaired ships for travelers, taught kids how to fix broken droids, and sometimes sat alone under the stars. Every night he placed the crystal beside him and spoke softly. "Still watching, aren't you?" And sometimes, just sometimes, the crystal pulsed in reply. One evening, as the sun set behind the horizon, the sky turned the same violet-blue color as her eyes. Eli smiled faintly. "You'd have liked this one," he murmured. A child from the colony ran up to him carrying a small flower that glowed faintly. "Mr. Eli, look what I found." Eli knelt, studying the flower. "Where did you get that?" The child pointed toward the edge of the forest. "It grows near the old wreckage. They say the ground there still hums with light." Eli's heart tightened. That place was where she had vanished, he whispered, "Lyra." That night he walked alone to the site. The ruins were covered in grass now, glowing softly under the twin moons. And there, where the reactor once stood a single tree, silver bark, violet leaves. Its roots pulsed gently, alive with quiet energy. Eli reached out and touched the trunk. The warmth spread through his fingers, through his chest, through his heart. Then he heard it, faint like a breath carried by the wind. "You kept your promise." Eli froze. "Lyra?" The leaves rustled, glowing brighter. "The light never died. It changed. Like we did," he smiled through his tears. "You're still here. Always," the voice whispered. "The galaxy needed hope. You gave it. Now." Live, the wind grew gentle again. The light faded, but the warmth stayed. Years passed. Eli grew older. The colony became a city. Humans and aliens lived side by side, building, laughing, dreaming. Children learned about the light of Lyra in school, but few believed it was real. Only one old man still visited the silver tree every evening. He would sit beneath it, touch the crystal hanging around his neck, and say softly, "You were never rejected, Lyra. You were chosen." And when the stars appeared, the sky would glow faintly violet, as if the universe itself was smiling back. In the end, love wasn't something born of power or fear. It was the quiet light that survived everything, even the void between stars.